Hey guys, welcome back. This is Chapter 6, The Duel for North America. Basically, this is the French and Indian War chapter. Now, as you know, we don't discuss a lot of battles and things like that, but the importance of the French and Indian War is what led to it, a couple of social events and political events that happened during it, and more importantly, what happened after it with the Treaty of Paris. So let's dive right into it. Here on the right, you see a map, and this map is particularly crucial because it shows the land that England, Spain, and France are controlling in North America. England being in the red, you see the northern part of Canada and, of course, the east coast where the 13 original colonies are. You also notice down Belize, Jamaica is controlled by England as well. You see the gray area controlled by France, which is some of Canada, the Louisiana Purchase area, and the Ohio Valley. And then the blue is Spain. We need to understand that there's only about 60,000 French colonists over here at this time, versus 2 million in the 13 British colonies. So we have a large population growth here in the colonies, but not too many French people over here at this time. We do need to understand that the French are going to be allied with the Huron Indians, and the British are going to be with the Iroquois and the Iroquois Confederation. That's going to prove crucial later on. We should know by now that the French are here for economic reasons, basically economic reasons only. Excuse me. They're not here for religious freedom. They're not here to start big, huge colonies like Virginia and Massachusetts. They're here to trap beaver, and they're very good at it. And this is one of the main reasons that they're so interested in the Ohio Valley, is because of the significant beaver population in that area. Now, the French have exposed natives to diseases and culture, but for the most part, the French and the Indians are getting along fairly well out on the frontier. They're not making big, huge colonies, so the natives in that area are, okay with the French being there for the most part. Here on the map, you see the area in question that's going to dominate the idea of the French and Indian War, and that is the Ohio Valley. Now, teaching here in Louisville, Kentucky, we know that we are part of the Ohio Valley. So this particular war hits very close to home, so to speak. Now, of course, being on the East Coast in the present-day United States, we're starting to venture into that region, and we're getting closer and closer to the French as the French are kind of moving south following beaver. So we're going to come into conflict with one another. And control of this region is control of North America, and that's what France and England are vying for here. Spain is still in the picture, but not near as heavily as they once were. And I talked to you about how Spain is going to slowly decline in importance throughout this course. Now, one of the most fascinating things about the very onset of the French and Indian War is that we're introduced to one of America's most famous historical characters in George Washington. France decided that they were going to build a fort, and this fort was called Fort Duquesne, and it's located in present-day Pittsburgh. Well, we should know that that area is Pennsylvania, and if a country builds a fort in our territory, we're going to become very, very suspicious, and we're going to want to go check that out. So George Washington is sent to the area to kind of see what's going on, so to speak. He takes about 150 militiamen with him, and also kind of hooks up with some local Native Americans who go and check that out as well with him. This is going to be a very crucial piece in the story. Here you see a map that kind of shows you where Fort Duquesne is. Now, on the way there, they ambush a French scouting party. And the Native Americans that were with George Washington killed the French commander and several French troops. They also took some prisoners. Now, Washington probably had very little control over the situation, especially with the natives. There's probably a distinct language barrier there, and just a tactical difference between the two groups. Unfortunately for George Washington, he is in command of this, and basically what has happened is he has started a major international conflict. Now, we call this the French and Indian War. This is part of a much larger war called the 7 Years' War, most of which is going on over in Europe at this time. Well, all that said, George Washington has started the American front, or the American theater of this war. Well, out of necessity, Washington quickly builds a fort. He calls his fort Fort Necessity, and asks for reinforcements to come and help him out. But those reinforcements never come, and ultimately Washington is defeated. When he's defeated, it's fortunate for us that the French allow him and his men to walk back home. They march away. They don't take us prisoners of war or anything like that. But Washington is defeated. So our introduction to like our most famous American ever is he starts the French and Indian War and gets beat real quick and has to go home with his tail between his legs. Not the greatest introduction to the father of our country, so to speak. Now, before I get into the Albany Plan of Union, I want you to understand that I skip a lot, basically all of the battles of the French and Indian War, but it's kind of crucial that we understand that the French are doing very well at the beginning. They are winning the French and Indian War. And this causes some concern for some people in the colonies, especially an individual by the name of Benjamin Franklin. Now, Franklin understands that we need to win this situation. We need, as the colonies and as Britain, we need to band together and try to make sure that France doesn't overtake us. So Franklin calls for what we call the Albany Plan of Union, and they meet at what we call the Albany Congress. Now, the Albany Congress has a long-term purpose to unify the colonies in a common defense against the French. 7 of the 13 colonies are represented there, and honestly, this isn't overly successful. It is very crucial, though, that we understand that the Albany Plan of Union, the Albany Congress, is a very early attempt at colonial unity, basically our first. We see the join or die snake there. We discussed that at great detail in class. That comes from the Albany Congress. Franklin is begging for the colonists to be unified, to unite, and work alongside their mother country of Britain to ensure their safety from both French and Native American attacks coming into the colonies. As the story moves along, France is doing well, and England has a new prime minister, and his name is William Pitt. He's young, he's virile, he's strong, and he is very unhappy with the way the war has been fought up to this point. Now, when he takes over in 57, he decides to change the game. He changed the tactics of the war, and one of the first things he does is he takes all the troops out of the Caribbean and puts that on the back burner and focuses on Canada and the capture of Quebec and Montreal. Now, this is very crucial. You know, it adds more soldiers to our area, and it allows for a better defense. He also decides to choose some young, energetic generals versus the older, more cautious type, and employ some new tactics that included things like guerrilla warfare, and things like that. So William Pitt is extremely crucial in the story and extremely important in the fact that he really helps us, helps Britain be successful in the front of this war. Now, as I said, I skipped the battles because you're not going to be tested on the battles. You do need to kind of understand overall generalities of the war, though. You know, France is winning at the beginning. Pitt changes strategies, and Britain becomes victorious in the French and Indian War. Now, during the war, though, even under the leadership of Pitt, many of the older British soldiers, they don't really like the way that Pitt or the American colonists are wanting to fight. They don't agree with guerrilla warfare tactics, and that causes some tension between the colonials and the British people. The British people basically treated the colonial soldiers as second-class citizens, you know, kind of treated them like garbage, to be honest with you. The colonials were very casual, they're very non-professional. They wanted to use those guerrilla warfare tactics, and the British soldiers looked down on them and just treated them bad. Also, the British government wanted the colonists to provide for their own defense. They should be paying for their own supplies, their own ammunition, their own guns, things like that, and that also upset, you know, the British colonists. From the perspective of the British colonists, you know, here we are helping you fight this war, and you're treating us poorly, and you're making us pay for it. And there's a lot of tension that grows out of this situation. This is one of those really small early seeds of the American Revolution. Now, the revolution is obviously coming very, very soon. And this is one of those pieces of information that you need to keep in the back of your head. If someone asks you, hey, what are the causes of the American Revolution? Well, these early tensions during the French and Indian War are going to kind of lead to that later on. Now, it's very general. It's not overly specific or anything, but it's definitely part of the cause. Well, Britain wins. They find success under the leadership of Prime Minister Pitt and the new tactics, and they do win. And the Treaty of Paris in 1763 settles, you know, the French and Indian War. This will not be our only Treaty of Paris in our course, and I mentioned that in class, so we need to make sure that we get the years correct on this. Treaty of Paris, 1763. Basically what that does is it kicks France out of North America. We, as the Britain, gains control of the Ohio Valley, most of Canada, and Spain ends up with the Louisiana Purchase. Now, just on a side note, Napoleon is going to gain that land back later on and then sell it to us. Students often ask me, you know, well, how did that happen? You know, I thought France was kicked out. Well, Napoleon gets control of it again, but then sells it to us. That's how we acquire the Louisiana Purchase, via the French. All in all, about 20,000 American colonists fought for the British during this war, and that's quite a few people. And as I said, the British did not treat us very well, okay? And I understand that I'm skipping a great deal of stuff we've already covered, and stuff that I don't feel that's overly important. In 1763, an event occurs that is of great importance. It's called Pontiac's Rebellion. Pontiac is the leader of the Ottawa people, and a handful of fur traders and the Ottawa decide that they don't like Britain out here in this new territory. There's still some leftover French people here as well, and the natives are scared of the British people being out here. They're building forts, they're building outposts, and that's not something that the French had done a lot of. Okay, so this new relationship with Britain isn't going the way the natives wanted it to, so Pontiac decides to start overtaking some of these British posts. He kills a lot of soldiers, British soldiers, and overruns many of these forts and outposts. Now the British retaliate, of course, and put this rebellion down. They use early biological warfare to do this. They infect blankets with smallpox and make sure that they're spread through the Indians, and this kills, many Native Americans. Pontiac ends up dying in 1769 in battle with another Indian tribe, but this rebellion is squashed. And now Britain understands that the relationship in the Ohio Valley with Native Americans could prove costly. So the British employ a new tactic. And this new tactic includes keeping the colonists out of the region. They want to make sure that the colonists don't upset the natives and have any reason to retaliate. Now, they decide in the Proclamation of 1763 to basically draw a line down the Appalachian Mountains, and this line, we call this the Proclamation Line of 1763, is a line that the colonists cannot cross. And this infuriates the colonists. Here from their perspective, they have fought with the British, they have died with the British, they have been forced to pay for their own defense, taxes are starting to go up on them, and now they can't even venture into the land that they fought for. So the colonists are extremely unhappy with the Proclamation Line of 1763. This is another one of those early tensions that end up leading to the American Revolution. If you get a question that asks, what are the major causes of the American Revolution, you need to be talking about the Proclamation Line of 1763. There are many other causes, but this cause is extremely important. Okay, so make sure you understand that.